Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Slash Filmcast, the official podcast of SlashFilm.com. I'm David Chen, and with me are...
Devindra Hardwire.
And Jeff Kanata.
And welcome to the show. Usually we talk about what we've been watching and get on into an in-depth review. This week, we're just going to be doing an in-depth review of John Wick Chapter 3. You can find more episodes of this podcast at slashfilmcast.com. You can also email us at slashfilmcast@gmail.com. I do want to read some emails before we get into our review of John Wick Chapter 3. These emails in particular are in response to our review last week in episode 517 of Detective Pikachu. Now, we will not be spoiling Detective Pikachu in these emails, but these emails will contain references to the premise of Detective Pikachu. And in last week's episode, we talked about Detective Pikachu. And Jeff Kanata, you and I particularly mused about what is going on with these Pokemon. Specifically, are they like slaves to the humans? And if so, is fighting them with each other, like letting them fight against each other, akin to like dog fighting, in which case everyone in the Pokemon universe is like monsters. They're just like terrible people, right?
Yeah, the premise of the movie is that there's a place where that doesn't happen, but the implication is that everywhere else, that's what's happening. So if there's a place where that doesn't happen, where they're treated as equals, shouldn't that be a red flag for everybody else?
Indeed.
Yeah.
So Maddie from Boston writes in to slashfilmcast@gmail.com. He writes, quote, this is a great episode. I've recently been going through your backlog and also listening to Dave's Game of Thrones podcast, and I've noticed that a lot of people write into you after an episode to comment on a mistake you made in an episode. And I'm always like, who are these people that care so much to write an email in response to something that's already gone out? Well, apparently this week, I am these people. I was absolutely mortified in this week's episode when Devindra rolled over and let Dave and Jeff compare Pokemon battling to hunting for sport and then to dogfighting. Obviously, I'm being hyperbolic, and this is all in good faith. I absolutely love your podcast and don't object to disagreements and opinions, but I figured I'd yell into the wind anyways, because apparently this is the hill I'm willing to die on. Lots of great metaphors here, Maddie. Pokemon and humans are partners. It's not a slave and master thing, and trainers cannot make Pokemon battle if they do not want to. There are many examples in the show that show Pokemon who refuse to battle. There's also a mechanic in the game where if you aren't a good enough trainer, stronger Pokemon will simply disobey in battle. The whole idea is that it's a two-way relationship between the Pokemon and the trainer. I compare it closer to the relationship of a coach and an athlete than to dogfighting. If anything, it's like MMA fighting, which may not be that much better, but it's not tricking an animal into fighting for its life. And of course, the Pokemon greatly benefits from being with the trainer too. They get food, shelter, family, free healthcare, etc. Obviously, there are people who will abuse Pokemon.
You just have to fight for it.
Yeah, you just have to fight them to death. Obviously, there are people who will abuse...
Everybody wants to fight in the Thunderdome. They love coming to the Thunderdome. You know what is not in the Thunderdome? A desolate wasteland where you have to kill for fuel. The Thunderdome is a great place.
Certainly, the arrangement where somebody performs slave labor in exchange for food and shelter is not something that has any antecedent in human history. Certainly, that's not an extremely upsetting arrangement that's ever occurred before.
Indeed.
But anyway,
I don't know if you guys know this, by the way, but in the original Pokemon movie, Pikachu also died. Like, things get dark. That was a cartoon for kids. Yeah, so...
It is almost exactly like MMA.
Yeah.
Because I know all the Pokemon are very well paid and have independence outside their... Oh, wait.
So anyway, Maddie, who's in the chat room right now, by the way, as we're broadcasting right now, Maddie writes in general, battling is a mutual understanding between two species that are capable of advanced thought. I think a more interesting rabbit hole to go down is thinking about how Tim Goodman, one of the main characters, works in insurance. Insurance has to be a travesty in the Pokemon world. Exploding ducks, dragons that breathe fire, Pokemon that can cause psychic explosions. There's a Pokemon that literally has scythes for hands. There's another Pokemon that puts children to sleep and eats their dreams. How do you insure anyone? Living in the Pokemon world is a never-ending nightmare of potential final destination deaths. Anyway, love the episode, love the podcast, and I love Detective Pikachu. Thanks, guys. End quote. So that comes in from Maddie. Yeah.
Top 10 all-time emails as far as I'm concerned, because it didn't even occur to me to go down this avenue, and it is ripe. It is ripe for juicy details. Yeah, poor insurance people in the Pokemon universe, that has got to be a rough job, or at least the premiums are got to be just astronomical.
If anything, I think that the movie Detective Pikachu really undersells how cruel and brutal this universe is, right?
Yes.
Like, because theoretically, with these creatures that have superpowers, you got to think there's collateral damage, deaths, potentially even murders happening on a pretty regular basis.
I mean,
And
there's a character who literally walks around with a ticking time bomb all the time. You know what I mean? Like, if you would startle it, if it gets too stressed out, it will explode. And that's just what she hangs out with all the time.
Okay, not literally a ticking time bomb then. I was like, did I miss it? Did I miss the ticking time bomb character?
It was quacking.
I mean,
Literally? Yeah.
It is a ticking time bomb, but yeah.
Yeah. It's metaphorically a ticking time bomb, Jeff.
Oh man,
But
how much time would we spend settling this, Dave?
The way you murder limericks, this doesn't surprise me though. So
I will say it kind of reminds me of Powerless, that short-lived NBC show about superhero insurance. It was set in the DC universe with like Bruce Wayne's cousin or something. It was hilarious.
So yeah, insurance would be pretty unworkable. I'm actually pretty bummed we don't get to see any of Tim Goodman's job, right? Like, what is his daily life like? That's a movie right there. That would show that the Pokemon universe is indeed extremely interesting.
In one way, you would imagine it to be a nightmare job, and in another way, the insurance sells itself. You know what I'm saying? Like, you gotta have it. This universe is fraught with peril. You know, it's like you gotta. Everyone's walking around with massive weaponry in the form of volatile, emotional creatures. So yeah,
I once was at a casino playing poker, and I struck up a conversation with the guy next to me, and I asked him, like, what do you do for a living? And he said that he worked for a company that insured insurance companies. Right, that like sometimes like a
who watches The Watchmen?
That's right, like a mass casualty event or something like that, or like a huge earthquake or something could theoretically deplete completely the cash reserves of like many insurance companies. And so, like, if like millions of people filed a claim at once, right, like that would be disastrous for many companies. And so this guy insured the insurance companies. And so I imagine in the Pokemon universe that that guy would also be doing pretty well. So anyway, so that comes in from Maddie. You can always write into /filmcast@gmail.com. Jenny from Texas also wrote into /filmcast@gmail.com. Jenny writes in, longtime listener, wanted to write in real quick after listening to your Detective Pikachu review. The most popular theory on why Pokemon fight is because they like to fight and wish to evolve. For the most part, the only way to evolve is to fight other Pokemon, gain experience, and get stronger. Pokemon also choose to be captured by their trainer, so they would not follow a trainer they didn't like or trust. Hope that cleared up one mystery. End quote. That comes in from Jenny from Texas.
The dogs love it. The dogs love it. They're so happy.
Yeah.
If only they had the freedom to do this on their own, you know, as free thinking individuals. Yeah.
I think, Devindra, you made the point during the pre-show game plan that that this is discourse that's been going on in the Pokemon universe for quite some time. That like people have debated the autonomy of Pokemon for generations at this point.
And the fact that it's a kid's game, I think, is kind of a little disturbing too. So there are certainly, like, the Pokemon Company has all sorts of rules, right? You never see, I think I mentioned this in the review, you never really see people eating meat or animals. I think the idea is like everybody's vegetarian or something. Like there are a lot of rules in this world to make it not horrific, basically. So people aren't eating their Pokemon.
Not more horrific.
There's like an underground world of like Pokemon eaters in this universe, probably. Like,
oh yeah.
Pokemon Vors. Okay. Anyway, so you can always write into us at /filmcast@gmail.com. We don't always get to read emails, but we always do read them, and so appreciated everyone's response.
You just said we don't always read them, but we read them.
Well, we don't always get to read them on the air, is what I mean to say.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But we always read them in our email box. So /filmcast@gmail.com is the address to send them to. Before we move on to our review of John Wick Chapter 3, we got to thank all the people who donated to the podcast this week. We got to thank Lalo Vargas Films, Douglas Laird, who gave us a really super generous donation, David O'Connor, Michael Crowder, Anna Crowder, Amy Crowder, and Jessica Crowder as well for their donations. And also Dan in London, United Kingdom, wrote in this with his donation. He said, "This is my first time donating or reaching out to you, but I've been listening to the Slash Filmcast for years and was a TRS fan back in the day. The Slash Filmcast is at the top of my feed, so I can listen as soon as your episodes drop. The thing that made me want to write in is to be an opposing voice to people that complain. I guess you could say my thoughts are best summed up in a limerick. Politics is sometimes discussed. We want our movies to be just. A vocal minority complains, but the fact simply remains, in Devindra, Jeff, and Dave, we trust.
Ah, nicely done,
That gets
Dan.
the Jeff Kanata limerick seal of approval. So thanks for that email, Dan, and for the donation. If you want to support what we do here on the podcast and help us to defray the cost of seeing movies and putting on the show for you, you can always go to paypal.me/filmcast. That's paypal.me/filmcast. You can also go to slashfilm.com, click on the /filmcast tab, and use the PayPal links on the side of the page. Never donate if it in any way causes you hardship. But if you want to donate and are able to do so without any impact, we'd really appreciate it. And if you don't have any money to donate but want to support us, just leave a review for us on wherever your podcasts are downloaded. That would be really appreciated as well. Leave a little rating for us. It takes no time. That's how you can support us. Thanks for all the donations this week. Thanks for all the reviews this week. Let's get to our review of John Wick Chapter 3. Okay. That was from the trailer of John Wick Chapter 3. And before we get into our non-spoiler section of our review, we will say that, like, in the non-spoiler section of the John Wick 3 review, we are going to be spoiling John Wick 1 and 2. So if you don't want to know what happens in any of the John Wick movies, you got to piece out.
What are you
come
doing
back.
here?
Got to piece
I
out.
mean,
come
are
back.
we? I guess we are, but
Well,
You
the
kind of have to.
The plot
You kinda
summary.
have to.
The plot
Yeah.
summary here says. So here it is. Here comes the spoilers for John Wick 2. After gunning down a member of the High Table, the shadowy International Assassins Guild, legendary hitman John Wick finds himself stripped of the organization's protective services. Now stuck with a $14 million bounty on his head, Wick must fight his way through the streets of New York as he becomes the target of the world's most ruthless killers.
Oh, you know, I think that number is a spoiler. I don't think we knew that before. This movie is ruined for me. Goodbye.
All right. Well, anyway, so John Wick Chapter 3 is out. And by the way, you know, before we even talk about the movie, we should mention that this movie's box office performance is incredible. I think
It's insane.
it's
also ruining all of our summer
yes,
wagers.
Yes.
so this movie, I think, performed 87% higher than John Wick Chapter 2, which is like the only
Crazy.
time anything like that has happened is Captain America: The Winter Soldier versus Captain America: Civil War, and in that instance, you had to bring in like Iron Man to make that happen, right? Like the only time like a Part 3 has grossed that much more than a Part 2 is when like extraordinary circumstances occur. And I don't know that this qualifies. This is just a movie that a lot of people wanted to see.
I think it's more like the fandom has had time to percolate. People have had time to like watch the first movie, streaming, and John Wick 2, and like now it's peak Wick time, baby.
What's also extraordinary is like this. I don't think this movie has ever been on Netflix, as far as I can recall. Right, which is or like I can't recall it being like on a major streaming service. So people have like found it on their own, and it drove it to a $57 million opening, unseating Avengers Endgame.
I knew it was going to be big when I tried to buy a ticket.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
several screenings were sold out, and
Yeah.
I was like, "Whoa, what?"
Yeah.
Because Detective Pikachu wasn't like that. It was easy. It was whatever I wanted, I could just walk in. And
Believe their Wick, man.
yeah, I couldn't believe it.
You've never seen a movie like an entry, like a number 3, do this well unless it's like an Avengers film, basically. So that's extraordinary. And I'm actually feeling really good about my list because here's the thing. I chose Rocketman as my number 10, which I deeply regret. And it was just declared that the movie's rated R. So there's essentially no way that I'm going to get Rocketman in the top 10. But if John Wick comes along riding in on a horse through New York streets and is able to get into the top 10, which seems very possible right now, then that is like he is like an agent of terror in our lists that will really mess things up. And that is an agent of chaos. and that is what I need right now in order to win the summer movie wager. So I am rooting for John Wick. Here's the thing, though. Unfortunately, I believe, Jeff, you chose it as one of your dark horses.
I did. I think somebody else did too.
I did too.
So
Danger did.
So that's really only going to help me a little bit, is what I'm saying. If
I mean, Dark Horse is only one measly point.
Is one
but
point,
still.
right? Yeah. But still, yeah, it's doing really well, and it has a chance at making to the top 10 of the summer. So we'll see. I don't think any of us ever, obviously
Clearly
we
not.
chose it a
Nobody-
dark horse, but no one put it in the top 10. No one put it.
Nobody-
in
I mean,
the top
what was
10.
the so I think week 2 was like what 85 million total,
Yeah, I think
right?
that's
Or
about
something
right.
like
Yeah.
that, something around that. I was tracking those numbers. Like this movie's not going to reach like past 150 or
Right,
something, and
right.
now this weekend alone is
92.
insane.
92 was John Wick 2. 92
Okay.
Don't you
million.
guys think that this points to the fact that this is going to be an insane summer for
Oh,
movies?
yeah.
Because for box office receipts in total, because we were already commenting how it is just jam packed with movies that all should make in the like 200 million range, and this wasn't even one of the ones in our calculus. It's wild. To think
I don't know if I share your sanguine opinion, Jeff. I actually think this portends that like it could be a bloodbath. And what I mean by that is that like people wanted a movie like John Wick Chapter 3 because they wanted something that was more real than like a lot of what is being offered to them, right? Than Avengers and Lion King, Aladdin. And I think Lion King is still going to crush. Like, I think it's going to do really well. But like, I think like the reason that Mission Impossible movies are really successful, the reason John Wick is really successful, is because people want to see the actor, the actual person doing the thing. They want to see like that person doing the thing and believing it. And
You don't think that's going to be the case for Aladdin?
I don't think so. I don't think Will Smith is actually a genie, unfortunately. So I don't know. I could see it going both ways. I think you're very possibly right that like maybe every movie's going to do well and a rising tide lift all boats. But like it's also possible that John Wick 3 is an aberration, an anomaly, and that like that this movie is going to do better than some of the other movies that we think are sure things. So we'll see. I could see it going both ways, and I actually lean more towards the latter. But yeah, we'll see. So John Wick Chapter 3, Devindra Hardawar, let's start with you. Your thoughts on John Wick 3 Parabellum?
Absolutely loved it. This movie feels like a fever dream to me, mainly because of Mark freaking Dacascos, guys. I don't know if you had the same 90s experience that I did, but I grew up watching all this guy's movies.
I need to give some context for this, which is that since I met Devindra over, I want to say 15 years ago, Devindra has been preaching the gospel of Mark Dacascos, right? Like, ever since we were in college, you're like, Dave, have you seen the new Mark Dacascos movie? Have you seen
it was Brotherhood of the Wolf at the time.
Yeah, have you seen Brotherhood of the
amazing.
Wolf? Have you seen, what is it, Only the Strong? Have you seen, like, and you would just name...
Drive.
Yeah, like you just name like every Mark Dacascos. So like Devindra is like stands hard for Mark Dacascos for over a decade, right?
I believed in him. I was happy when he became the chairman on Iron Chef America. I was also sad because that portended like how badly his movie career was doing. But he's been on some things. He's been on Hawaii Five-0. He was on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. But his film career has kind of stumbled. He is back and awesome in this movie. So I give this movie a ton of credit just for that. Mainly, though, I love this movie because it starts with exactly what John Wick 2 didn't really have, which is stakes. At the end of John Wick 2, he lost everything. And I was eager, for the past 2 years to see how he's going to get out of this mess. So I was really I was on board completely with the narrative this time. Whereas 2, it was it continued from John Wick 1, which I loved. But 2, basically, the continuing motivation in 2 is we blew up your house, and also you owe us for this contract, so go do that thing. Far less exciting, I'd say. This movie, he loses everything, and everything's also so much more difficult, too. As beautiful as the action was in 2, I did not really enjoy the fact that he got literally a bulletproof suit. Everything felt a little too easy. It felt a little too Matrix Reloaded to me. This movie, we still got that suit, but things get hard. Things get rough. And we see a lot of things we've never seen before. Horse action? The craziest knife fight I've ever seen in a movie.
Let's save some of that stuff for the
Yeah.
spoilers. But agreed that the action scenes are extremely ambitious. And glad you like this movie better than the last one. Jeff Kanata, your thoughts on John Wick Chapter 3 Parabellum?
Well, Dave, I guess you could say my thoughts about John Wick 3 Parabellum would best be summed up in the form of a limerick.
What a shock.
Mm-hmm. I've had a hard time finding glee in Wick film shooting sprees. But that's kind of been solved because it's finally evolved to the cartoon it always wanted to be.
All right, interesting. Explain that, Jeff Kanata.
I very vividly remember. Was I reviewing on the show when Wick 1 came out? I don't remember what show I was reviewing on, but I had very mixed feelings watching Wick 1 because I think it came out the same week. It's kind of hard not to be the same week in this country, but it was the same week as a big mass shooting, and I had that on my mind when I saw the first John Wick, and I couldn't help but bring that into the theater with me, and it put a sour taste in my mouth for the joy that I was supposed to feel in watching point blank gunshots to the face, and the sort of fetishization of guns that is the John Wick series, and so it was always over the top and heightened, but it did feel the first movie in particular felt fairly grounded. It was a gritty sort of grounded thing with some over the top action. We have gotten to the point now with the third one where we are in full Looney Tunes land, and I love it. I'm happy. I'm happy to be there. It's Jackie Chan. It's it is action that is creative and wild and unrealistic and cartoonish in the best possible way. It's an anime done live action, and I'm down for that. I still think there is this sort of love letter to guns that just hits me now in the age I'm in the year that we are in, as not something that is as fun as it used to be when I was a kid. When I could watch Rambo and just be like, yeah, I don't feel that as much anymore just because the way the world works now. But this movie has so much fun in showing action sequences without guns. Devindra referenced a scene that I like to call the fight scene of infinite knives. That is one of the most fun sequences I've ever seen in an action movie. And this movie is really clever, really inventive. It demonstrates the fact that you can come up with stuff we've never seen before still, even this point in cinema when action sequences seem to be straining to find something novel. This movie finds 4 or 5 things. I'm just like, wow, I've never seen that before. And not because they're able to do stuff with CG, although they are, but because, the idea of it, the concept of it is novel. And that's really cool. The story and the world building is just has lost its mind. We'll get to it in spoilers, but there's a whole detour into the desert that is like, what? Why? I don't get it. But this movie, the John Wick series has become its own sort of James Bondian loopiness, in the sort of Roger Moore years, and it's just like cartoon characters, and that's kind of the fun. And I'm finally able to really enjoy most of it because it's indulging itself. It's not taking itself seriously at all, and it's having a blast and not trying to make me, feel the weight of the violence because it's now cartoony.
Well, I am a little bit torn about John Wick Chapter 3, gents. I think I have two minds about it. On the one hand, 15 minutes into this movie, and it's already delivered 2 of the most ambitious action sequences I've ever seen in my entire life.
Yeah.
At least
Right.
2. And that's just the beginning. It then goes on to attempt to top those action sequences, right? Not to mention, there are some action pairings in this film that I'm not going to give away right now. We'll talk about it in spoilers. But that it's like a dream come true. It's like if you're a kid and like thinking like, what if so and so fought so and so, like that's what you would come up with, right? At least I would. Some of the action pairings that occur in this movie, so it's like, wow, like incredible action matchups that I'm just so thrilled to be watching. On the other hand, it feels like a little bit of a missed opportunity. It feels like you said, Jeff, they decided to go full-on cartoon. And to me, it felt like that there was still another way they could have gone with this movie, which is like they could have gone a more grounded way. I remember listening to a Q&A podcast, like Jeff Goldsmith's podcast with one of the screenwriters, talking about what the potential for the third film might be. And what he described there felt like it has much more emotional stakes than what was in this film. And rewatching the first two in preparation for this discussion today, I was struck by just how many more characters there were in the first film that I cared about. Specifically, John Leguizamo as being kind of John Wick's buddy. Where is he anymore? And William Dafoe had this whole kind of like friendship with John Wick that I really appreciated. And
the movie just doesn't care about that stuff anymore.
That's exactly right. And I think that's just like mildly sad in the sense that like it would be one thing if the movie was just pure action, like no plot, and just like the movie exists to deliver really beautifully choreographed, well lit, nicely like interestingly shot action, and that was it. But instead, it's replaced it with all this, in my opinion, like masturbatory plot about the high table. It's just complete nonsense, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I just don't think any of it stands up to even the mildest of scrutiny. I
am wondering though, Dave, like how does this compare to John Wick 2, which I think you could apply all those criticisms to, and it doesn't have like the more interesting elements of this movie. Like it doesn't even have the motivation done well.
I think you're right about that, Devendra. I think you're right. Like I actually like this movie better than John Wick 2, and looking back, like comparing this to John Wick 2, I think this is the much better movie. I guess I kind of gave John Wick 2 a pass because the action was still pretty good, and it felt like they were trying to test the limits of the world. That's what what John Wick 2 felt like. It's like, okay, how if we dig down another layer into this world, like how far can we go? And different people will find it to be differing levels of satisfaction or satisfying. And it's clear looking back on it that it's not that satisfying in terms of like how interesting that world is. I think that these series of films are very enamored with this world. They're like,
yes,
it feels very pleased with itself.
It's up its own ass
in terms of like, oh, the Continental and all this stuff. And it's like it is this kind of world where like if you start thinking about it even just a little bit, like it doesn't really make any sense. And
this movie would have you believe that there is no one who isn't an assassin.
Right.
Yeah. Right. Everyone's an assassin.
That's basically. Right. Yeah. And so this movie, in my opinion, John Wick 3 had two choices. One of two choices. It could either go deeper into the world, into this like self-wankery, which is what it did, or it could choose to be more grounded and have a story that had like more emotional stakes, and it didn't do that. And I think that is a bit of a missed opportunity. That being said, I did really enjoy the film. I've seen it twice already. I welcome more John Wick movies in the future. Like I look forward to seeing what kind of innovative action they can come up with. But at this point, like I'm kind of like emotionally and intellectually like checked out of the movie.
I think
series
that
of movies,
as
right?
action films, though, as just pure action sequences that you could even excise out of the film and just watch on their own. This movie is better than both of the previous films.
Agreed, 100%, 100% agreed.
In terms of skill, like the inventiveness of the set pieces, the choreography, like it's all leveled up. I will say though, like Dave, like I totally agree. The first movie is always will have the more emotional stakes for me because that movie spends half an hour where there is no action.
No action.
There's
right.
no killing. It's just it's grief. It's loss. It's John Wick dealing with the loss of his wife and these asshole gangsters who make his life hell. I don't know if we'll get that again. Unfortunately, because of the way the momentum the movies has now, we can't really do that again.
Yeah, I mean, I think we could have, but you're right. Like, it's very much like comparing Die Hard 1 to Die Hard 3, right? Die Hard 1, there's like no action for like 45 minutes. and it's to set up like what is at stake, who these characters are, why we should care about what happens to them. And Die Hard 3, I think, is a great movie still,
Great.
but it's like nonstop, like going from place to place, diffusing bombs, literally. And that's kind of what this feels like. It's like we kind of already built we're like the level of emotional stakes that we've established. We're never going to go higher than that. In fact, we're not even going to meet that level again, right?
It's not about that anymore.
Yeah, it's not about that anymore. Not about that anymore. So
it's kind of like comparing Fast and the Furious 1 to Fast and the Furious 8.
Yeah, exactly. That's another good comparison. Another good comparison.
We just got there really quickly. I will say, I think the stakes of John Wick losing everything, like for the first two movies, he's had this protection of this whole assassin society and everything he could get from, the Continental and all that stuff. He's had a lot of concierge help. And I like the idea that he is starting this movie. He got 10 minutes? He got like a little time to run out and be free. And like his first thing is, okay, I gotta like get free, gotta get fixed, gotta get my money, gotta get out of here. And I like that. I like that process of it. Like it's a very pragmatic way to approach the situation. Because I was wondering since the end of 2, is like, oh shit, what does this mean for John Wick? And I think they've handled that escalation of those stakes pretty well, at least.
You know what's pretty hilarious about the John Wick series is that the events of the entire first 3 films take place in, I think, 2 weeks, basically.
2 weeks, yeah. This dude needs a break.
Less than a month, essentially. So that's pretty great. It's very like Saw-esque or Bourne-esque in terms of like how the movies play with time and like because this movie begins as you said, Devindra, minutes after the last one ends. So pretty.
Same as for number 2. Like it's just it kept going. Yeah.
All right, let's get to spoilers for John Wick Chapter 3 Parabellum starting right now.
Oh man, that horse action. The horse.
I don't know, dude. Knife fight. Dude. Yeah, horse kicking dude several times. Amazing.
Those are real horses, apparently. Like they were tweeting about this. That wasn't just CG horse.
Dude, you could tell the one horse like started leaving the scene or they're fighting, and there was some trainer off screen going, back, Nelly, back. It was, oh, dude, that was insane.
The knife is amazing. The knife
fight was my favorite, but the dogs, like
dogs are so good. Dog actually ran up the wall.
I've never seen choreographed camera moves with multiple dogs coming from off multiple screen sides doing cool things that have to do it at the exact right moment, or you're going to screw up this extraordinarily long take with actors doing all kinds of crazy things and explosions going off, and then you got to trust these dogs to do this exact thing. It was crazy.
Yeah, they say never work with kids and animals, right? And I cannot imagine setting up these scenes with dogs,
It is really remarkable. It is remarkable, the dog stuff, because, well, first of all, I think they got the guy who did who worked with the dire wolves in Game of Thrones. They got him to do the dog training stuff.
Well, I wouldn't think of the dire wolves in Game of Thrones as being, wildly choreographed.
The wolves had to be trained enough to not kill anyone on set, and so. But
I guess that's important.
I think it's what's interesting about the way this movie is shot is obviously the director Chad Stahelski, he got his start in stunt coordination and being a stunt person, and what I love about this series of films is that the choreography, the stunt work is what they want to show you, right? Like in other movies, it's like, oh, we want to show this person getting shot, this person dying, whatever, and the stunt work is kind of like a kind of ancillary thing, like a bonus thing on top of that. Mm-hmm. In this movie, that is the meal that they're serving you. Look at what these people have put themselves through. There's like a shot where
Jackie Chan.
Yeah, exactly. There's a shot where at Grand Central Station, where Keanu emerges from like the rear entrance of Grand Central, and he tackles a guy off of a bike, and then in the same shot tackles another guy off the bike, and then shoots them both in the head, like in one shot. And it's just like, oh my, like in any other film, this would be 10 shots in like a 5 seconds. But like they do it all one long continuous shot, like they pan from left to right. I'm just like, wow, like they did it to show you that these are real hits, that they tried to be as practical as possible, and that ethos infuses the entire film and is really impressive to watch. So,
I mean, if somebody tweeted something about his editing philosophy too, like they never edit mid-move. Like it's always at the completed move. So you see everything that's actually happening, as you would in a martial arts film, as you should. I was watching The Scorpion King was on TV recently, and man, do you guys remember that movie? We have come so far, so far when it comes to like action and big set pieces, and that was maybe 15 years ago. I forget.
More
But
than that, man.
yeah.
well, the
this
action
is
of this
insane.
movie looks beautiful. I mean, just
Yeah.
it's interesting, like the way that John Wick fights people. I think they called it like gun fu or whatever. It actually reminds me of like the gun kata from Equilibrium, Devendra.
Gun kata, baby.
The Christian Bale action film, and the way he takes down villains or henchmen is beautiful to watch, right? It's like this dance. It's not like they're talking about the difference between. I was watching I've watched a lot of like bonus content for this movie, and I was listening to the director talk about like in a real fight, like the difference between like a real fight and choreography is like you try to like injure like you try to disable the person as much as possible in a real fight.
Yeah.
And in the John Wick movies, there's like a rhythm to the action scenes, right? It's like hit, like it's like this kind of, it's almost like a metronome, like this kind of like back and forth like dance between the two people that are fighting.
It's ballet, and I kind of love
yeah.
that they got the ballet imagery in there too, like really, really showing us up front like what sort of choreography we're dealing with here.
Well, there's this one scene in that ballet sequence where a character takes off their toenail. One of the ballerinas removes their toenail, and rewatch it. The first time I saw it, I was like, "Oh, this is just kind of like a little disgusting touch." But the second time I watched it, it did occur to me that this is the movie's way of telling you that like people have suffered to bring you this art that you're watching right now. That all art is suffering, and that like people have worked really hard to make this movie, and you got to respect that to some degree, right? You got to respect.
And
it, so.
to that end, not enough can be said about Keanu. I mean, the dude is a gifted physical actor. I especially at his age, doing the number of things that he does in this movie. I mean, we go on and on about Tom Cruise, and rightfully so, but Keanu brings it in these movies, and in particular this one. I feel like he has more of that to do in this movie than he has had in any of the previous, and maybe even more than he ever did in any of the Matrix movies. It's a lot of physicality and a lot of him doing it. So it's kudos to that.
The guy is 54 years old.
It's unbelievable.
Right?
Insane.
Unbelievable. But like when he's running, you can kind of see his age a little bit, right? Like he kind of runs like he's really worn down and weird, like through the rain. Those first, he's not running.
Well,
like,
how much of that
I
is
think at that
acting?
point it does seem like he is a worn down at that
I
point
mean,
as
he's
a
been
character, right?
brutally beaten up, and I think maybe that some of that is intentional.
Yeah. No. I agree. I agree. It's intentional. I mean, I'm sure he could run faster if he wanted to, but also that is what a 54-year-old person would look like running in that situation, in my opinion.
It's just that Tom Cruise doesn't know how to run injured.
That's right.
He just runs beautiful. That's all
right.
he knows how to do.
He only knows how to run beautiful. That's right.
I mean,
Okay, so here's one of the biggest problems of the movie for me, right? Like the biggest issue emotionally in this movie for me is the Halle Berry subplot. Halle Berry is incredible in this film. She shows that she is just as skilled as John Wick, right?
She's awesome
in this movie, and that's one of the awesome things about this movie is that like all the main stars, right? Halle Berry, Mark Dacascos, Keanu Reeves are all over 50 years old, and they're all showing you can still kick ass and look incredible doing it. It's inspiring. Life goals. #life goals. Right.
Also great that the series is like at a point where like I think Halle Berry was just like, I want to be a part of this and I want to do the training. Like people want the training, which is unique to like this whole series of films, and also like Atomic Blonde, right? The co-director of John Wick 1, I believe, did that. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, I was listening to the director talk about it, and on the Big Picture podcast, they did an interview with the director of John Wick 3, and talking about how like most people are like, you're shooting a film? Well, let's do like 6 weeks of training, and he's like 6 weeks. I'm talking about 6 months of training, and he's like, you got, and it's like the first week of training is really fun, but then like by month 5, when you're like driving to 3 gyms a day, spending 2 hours in LA traffic, and then training for like 8 to 10 hours a day, and you're exhausted, you're bruised, you're injured every day. It's hard to spend time with your family. It's less fun for people. It's a huge sacrifice for people to do these movies, and for Keanu to continue to do these movies. And it's all there up on the screen. But going back to the Halle Berry subplot, I think
kind of a mess. Yeah.
I think first of all, she is completely forgotten after she appeared. Like I thought we were gonna like come back to Halle Berry at some point. We never do.
I ran to the bathroom like right after that. So what happened like as he was getting to the desert? Did they just say goodbye and she left?
They said goodbye to the desert and she just
literally
let him go. Yeah.
Really?
Literally,
Even
she's
after
like,
doing the thing that she was worried about that would put her daughter in danger.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
The big moment is that she drinks some water and then spits it back into the bottle and gives it to him.
Yes.
That's the big moment that they have, which was dumb. And the whole idea that he goes and the way to meet the person who's above the table, which is super not clear even what that means, is walk in the desert until you can't walk anymore and then keep walking, and then they'll either find you or they won't. And he takes that literally and goes and does it. And it works somehow.
It never crossed my mind that it wasn't literal, though, Jeff.
Yeah.
I always thought that was actually what he was.
This is going back to weird legendary stuff, right?
Yeah.
This is like weird King
dumb.
Arthur type mythology. Like
It's dumb. And I didn't buy. First of all, I didn't buy the adjudicator as being a real threat. Like she seemed ridiculous.
I
the
feel
whole
like
time.
they needed maybe somebody slightly stronger as an actress there or actor.
Yeah.
Like
I think the performer is great. Asia K. Dillon is fine. It's just like the performance. It was, I would say, her and Mark Dacascos kind of felt like they were in a different film. They kind of were like in a much even more campy version of this movie than John Wick 3 already is. And the adjudicator's performance just did not work for me at all. But yeah, so then they show up and they meet John Wick shows up and meets the elder, who is like
Not so old.
8 years younger than John Wick.
But also, what possible? The movie doesn't care to establish why he is important, other than people say he is important. That's
the entire mythology of this movie, though, right? Like John Wick is important because everyone's afraid of him, and then he shows us why. But
he shows us why, right? This guy. Yeah. There's no showing of why. There's no reason. He's out in the middle of nowhere, and yet somehow is above all the goings on in New York. Like what? I don't.
And then the thing that he tells John Wick to do is literally something that he could. It's not like you need to kill 1,000 dudes. It's you need to kill this one guy that we literally have like a SWAT team 5 minutes away that we could just send to kill this guy.
Right.
And in fact,
also you
and in
kind
fact,
of already want to kill him.
And in fact, the act of sending you to kill him may in fact jeopardize that entire mission.
This was probably not a great plan to come to think of it.
Not a great plan.
I also I don't want to skip ahead too far, but I'm going to. I don't buy the last double cross of what's his name?
Winston?
Yeah, Winston. That shooting him and knocking him off the building. Why? You have established that John Wick is willing to go to war with you and for you. You have established that you guys are actually friends, and you had multiple opportunities to save face with the high table and stay alive and just murder John Wick. And you have at multiple times said, no, I'm not going to do that. And now for no reason whatsoever, even though you have the upper hand, you decide to kill him. It makes no sense.
I got the feeling that he kind of knew he would survive.
Yeah, in the movie's defense, Jeff, I think it's possible that Winston knew John Wick would survive. So
he knew that shooting him and knocking him off a multi-story building.
Yep.
Yeah. This is John Wick.
It's John Wick.
This is John Wick. He killed 3 men with a pencil. Okay.
He's the Bob O'Reilly.
Bob O'Reilly.
Although here's what is weird to me is at the end of John Wick Chapter 2, or during John Wick Chapter 2, there's a pretty awesome sequence where he's like meeting the gun sommelier and meeting the tailor, and he's like, "What kind of suit do you want? Tactical." And it's like this suit has like bulletproof lining sewn into it. And then later on, he meets the elder, gets a new suit, but apparently that suit also has the bulletproof lining. So
Of
like, is that
course.
just like a standard thing now?
We'll have all the upgrades. He's the elder. Come on.
I agree with you though, Devindra, that like the idea of John Wick having a bulletproof suit is kind of lame.
It is lame, but this movie, I think they showed that the knives, first of all, it may be bulletproof, not quite knife proof, but the idea when they got those the super armored soldiers
that
towards
was
the
cool.
end,
That
was
cool.
like, okay, oh, things are difficult again. He has to like,
Yeah.
it's not just a headshot, it's like 5 headshots, and it's like it's a struggle.
Shooting
and I
people
like
in the
that.
neck.
I like that
Yeah,
struggle.
he's got to go in the neck. That's right, or use a shotgun.
Mhm.
So that was interesting. I like the movie did had interesting ideas from the action perspective. Also, a scene inspired by The Villainous, I think, with the motorcycles, right? Which
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
which was Devindra's movie of choice when he won the Summer Movie Wager in a huge anomaly.
You're welcome, guys.
yeah.
You're welcome. You're prepared for John Wick 3.
I do think that the Villainous did it better, but it was a very cool sequence in John Wick for sure.
Mhm.
Well, when he cuts off that guy's arm and the arm gets stuck in the motorbike wheel, and I mean that's just
Pretty cool.
Incredible.
I think they both did it pretty well, but Villainous does a lot more CG trickery, like a lot more camera tricks to make that look like people were actually riding on bikes and sword fighting. Whereas this movie, it looks like they were definitely riding down the highway quite a bit. So
I don't know. I mean, the camera was doing some pretty impossible stuff, so I don't know how they actually did it. But
big shout out to all the assassins who want to kill John Wick, but not at the expense of killing a horsey. You know, like big shout out to those guys. Because you got to have standards. You know what I'm saying?
Gotta have standards. The raid guys, I love how respectful they were during that fight.
Guys, they had the main villain from the Raid 1 and 2 in fight John Wick in this movie.
Yeah.
And that is awesome. I love how respectful they were of him. And also, it felt good to me that then he didn't kill them after he defeated them. You know?
Yes.
Yeah.
That felt good to me. So, okay, but back to the Halle Berry stuff. Here's the thing that really bothers me about the Halle Berry stuff is we've just had this whole speech that Halle Berry gives about how, like, I can't have these people finding my daughter. And I'm thinking to myself as well.
The last thing I need is some trouble in my life, okay?
And I'm watching this and I'm thinking, like, okay, like, wow, actual emotional stakes. Maybe we're gonna meet the daughter. Like, it's gonna be, you have my curiosity. Now you have my attention, John Wick.
Meeting the daughter or something.
Right? Yeah, some of that. And then she just goes and then proceeds to jeopardize all that because of her dog. Which, on the one hand,
consistent
with the John Wick universe, but like the reason John Wick, destroyed Michael Nyquist's entire organization in John Wick 1 is because he had literally nothing to lose. He had lost his wife. His dog had been murdered. So I believe that character would be like, F it. I'm just going to take down the whole organization. But you've already set up Halle Berry as somebody who gives a crap about something other than herself. And so then the idea that she would just then, like, shoot Braun from Game of Thrones, it doesn't scan for me. At least not if you want me to take emotional stakes seriously in this universe anymore, which I don't think it does.
It feels like they kind of did it just for the joke, too. Like, just for John Wick to say, I get it.
Pretty good joke.
It all felt a little cheap.
It's a pretty good gag. A lot of people laughed, but
I mean, if you named this series a dog's journey, it would be fine because
Yeah. So that was a big disappointment, and kind of like the biggest weakness of the film for me is like the one stab it has of like making this something that I actually care about, a character I care about with a history I care about. It completely drops the ball. That said, the salve on that wound is it then follows that scene up with one of the most spectacular action sequences I've ever seen, which is the dog sequence.
Hashtag worth.
Hashtag worth? What do you mean?
It was worth
the price of admission.
Worth the complete fucking of the logic of
worth it. There you go.
Complete ruining the logic of any of character motivation just to get to that action sequence. It's like, who cares? We just got to see that. Also, it occurred to me that maybe we could do a good Boom Goes a Dynamite with a movie came out this weekend where a dog affects the life and death of many people, but enough about John Wick. I want to talk about a Dog's Way Home. I don't know.
Way Home.
Nice.
I'm composing it on the fly. It's
Nailed
not
it,
great.
Jeff.
Yeah.
Also, I'm pretty sure you're talking about A Dog's Journey. Please get that straight.
Don't know the difference between the dog movies.
Which is apparently about the multiple lives of a
Yeah, it's
single
like
dog? Or no, it's about
reincarnation.
the same soul moving across different dogs.
It's
I'm
about
very
dog
confused.
reincarnation. That's right.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Gotta
Which
love
is
it.
weird. I don't know. Anyway, we don't need to talk about that. Go ahead.
Gotta love it. There is not enough Mark Dacascos talk here, and I want to say I
He's
loved
great.
him so much. Like he is kind of channeling NoHo Hank from Barry. A little like his fanboying is
That's
is
funny.
fun.
Yeah.
Same
It
look,
kind of comes
same
in
vibe.
at an odd time, really late in the movie, where
Yes.
he's like, you've seen him for a long time before that quality comes out, but it's welcome when it does.
And here's the sushi chef, by the way. I do kind of love that his character basically introduces ninjas into the John Wick universe, which is good. Nice to have some Asian representation in the series too, but also ninjas. Like they're so like beyond the all the gangsters and like all the henchmen. Like they are just tearing people apart, coming in from the shadows. I like that we can still escalate the insanity in this world with people like them.
Yeah, but the scene when he makes the scary sushi for the lady and she eats it, if that was supposed to make me think she was badass, it failed completely.
Agreed 100%. Like pretty rough.
Yep.
And also what's weird about that scene is they don't even explain that in the pufferfish there is a portion that isn't poisonous.
Right.
So they didn't even set it up correctly, in my
He
opinion.
just said it's poisonous. She's like, all right,
Yep,
cool.
I'm gonna eat it. It's like, no, it's poisonous if prepared incorrectly. Please get the sushi lore correct, John Wick. Also, what is the economy of this assassin world if these literally 3 of the most badass people on the planet need to be working at the sushi stand? Like they can't like
Knife skills up, man.
they can't
And nothing
retire.
is more-
Like
yeah.
they gotta be working sushi all the time and like pretending to be this like speaking broken English. Anyway,
Yeah.
But
I like
those gold coins. I was going to say those gold coins can't be taken everywhere, but evidently they can because every cab driver knows them. Evidently,
We got to see how they're made. I don't think we needed that, but okay.
yeah.
I like what Twitter user @FoyWonder said about Mark Dacascos' character. He said on Twitter today, quote, "Is Mark Dacascos' John Wick 3 character a perfect metaphor for modern fanboys?" And then he has a bulleted list here. Fawn over the IP, demand they recognize you as their creative equal, troll them and set out to destroy the thing you claim to love, fail miserably yet insist they validate your existence. And I thought that was a good summary.
His name is Zero. So
His name is Zero, not an accident, I don't think. So
Best line in the movie was when he's like, "That was a pretty good fight, huh?"
that when that character says that pretty good fight, huh? That is basically what any online internet that is what any like hashtag release a Snyder Cut person is thinking when they deliver a scathing argument about why Warner Brothers needs to do right by the fans. So anyway, any other thoughts on John Wick Chapter 3? I think it was a great time. I can't wait to watch it again on home video.
It's a good sit.
It's a good sit.
Speaking of stakes, by the way, I do kind of love that all of John Wick's friends ended up paying for his indiscretions too.
Yeah.
Like this movie really stacks up. Oh, there are consequences to this, insane violence, basically, and that's part of the stakes building to me.
No, nobody should have helped him. Everybody who helps him suffers, and he does nothing for them.
Also, Angelica Houston, didn't mention her, but so good, so good.
Yeah, she's awesome. Yeah. And there's that scene when like the ninjas are raiding Angelica Houston's lair, as it were, and there's like this scene when like these like 3 dudes, it's like Mark Dacascos and the 2 guys from the raid, like walk onto the stage clad entirely in black. And it's
so dumb.
It's beautiful though. It's
so dumb. Why? What are they doing?
Right,
embrace it, Jeff.
But
embrace it.
That scene though, that shot, Jeff, I think encapsulates everything about the film. And if you listen to the directors talk about the movie, it really feels like, hey, that looks cool. Let's put it in the film, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and that's fine. Like, I enjoy that, but like, then that is the level of seriousness that this series aspires to. And that's how serious I'm going to take it from now on. Like I'm not going to.
Yeah, as you should. Yeah, this is what it's explicitly asking now.
Right.
Also, every future John Wick movie, there's going to be some poor CG artist who has to erase one of Keanu's fingers from every shot.
Yeah, that's rough. I was thinking about the logistics of that for a while.
I did think that was kind of interesting when he like takes off his ring and his ring finger, and it's like he's like, "Prove your worth," and he like takes off the ring finger. It's like, and the elder is like, "Whoa, I just wanted you to like cut yourself or something." Like, it's like, how did he know that is that an unwritten rule that they need to go and like remove the finger?
I guess it's all unwritten rule. Everything is, couched in years of tradition in this.
Losing fingers is a common thing in assassin lore, so I guess it works out. I don't know. Does that hurt his gun handling or anything though?
It's his left hand.
And it's a useless finger.
It's not his gun hand, so he'll be just fine. He'll be just fine. You all looking forward to John Wick Chapter 4, which seems a sure thing now with Lawrence Fishburne, the homeless person king. That now going like that's actually another frustrating thing about this movie is like, in my opinion, this movie basically the state of play at the end of John Wick 3 is what I thought it would be at the beginning of John Wick 3. Like, I thought like, oh, he's taking on the high table. Like, that's what I thought was gonna happen in this film.
Yeah.
But now he's really doing it this time. Y'all looking forward to it? You psyched?
I mean, it'll be fun. Yeah. I mean, I think this series now has defined its terms, and I'm in it for the action sequences. I want clever, novel action sequences.
Mm-hmm. I'm looking forward to it. I don't want it to get too big. That's the thing. I don't want this to become like a huge $150 million, series or something for budget.
Right.
They need to stay nimble, need to stay kind of, I think that helps a series like this for sure.
I don't know, man. I kind of feel like the fact that we went to Morocco, I feel like it's going to be one of those things now, like in James Bond and Fast and Furious, where you get that big wide shot and then the text on screen that says, Shanghai or wherever, wherever we are next. It's.
I mean, if TV shows can do it on a cheaper budget, I don't know. We'll see.
I think we're globetrotting now.
Yeah. I agree that I don't want the series to get too big either. What's fascinating to me is like how effortless, to the film. I've been complaining about the movie, but to its credit, how effortless it made coming up with these inventive action scenes feel. It's like, because
they deserved it.
We have collectively, between the three of us, we have watched thousands of action scenes in our life, right? And we're thinking like, okay, we basically know what an action scene can contain, right? And this movie said, nope. There's things that you didn't even think about that we have in this movie, and I'm curious how long they can keeping up that trick, and I'm going to keep paying money to see. So
that's for sure.
I think we leave it there. All right. Well, stay tuned here. We'll be discussing next week. Find more episodes of this podcast at /filmcast.com. Email us at /filmcast@gmail.com. Our theme song comes from AdamWarrock.com. Our spoiler bumper comes from filmmaker Kyle Hillinger. This episode was produced by Beatty Zhang. Until next week. Devindra Hardawar, where can people find more of your work on the internet this week?
I am at Devindra on Twitter, and I write about techaandgadget.com. I won't be here next week, but I'm sure you guys will have fun.
Yeah, indeed. We will be going Devindra-less because you'll be at Computex. Safe travels, Devindra.
Thank you.
So, Jeff Kanata, where can people find more of your work?
Well, you can follow me on Twitter at Jeff Kanata, which is spelled with 2 N's and 1 T. And I want to thank /Filmcast listeners that have sent me nice emails and tweets, having checked out my brand new Dungeons & Dragons show that I talked about a little bit on the show last week. We are going strong. It is a live play Dungeons & Dragons show called The Dungeon Run. Maybe you're going through withdrawals of fantasy type stuff now that Game of Thrones is off the air. Why not give it a shot? It's fun. It's improvised storytelling, but I think you'll dig it. I'm really proud of it. You can find it on YouTube. It's called The Dungeon Run. You can find it as an audio podcast if you want to experience it that way. But the best way, because you can actually interact with the show and cause things to happen in the game world, is by watching it live Wednesday nights, 6 p.m. Pacific time on caffeine.tv/The Dungeon Run. I also do a video game podcast called DLC, which you can find at 5by5.tv/DLC.
Find all my stuff at davechen.net and follow me on Twitter at davechensky. Next week is Memorial Day weekend. We'll be reviewing Aladdin.
So I guess what you can say, Dave, is we will show you the world.
I'm glad I'm not here next week. Man.
I think what I'm saying is, be our guest, be our guest.
That's the wrong movie, man.
That's the wrong movie? Okay.
Don't you dare close your eyes.
All right, this podcast is over.
Hold your breath. It gets better.